Arlington's Guarantee is a fully privately funded pilot that the Arlington Community Foundation embarked on in 2021. We have 200 families in this community that are getting $500 a month for 18 months, the last of which will finish that 18 months later this fall. Providing cash with no strings attached is absolutely essential to giving families the breathing room that they need to be able to work on their aspirations for their families and to care for their loved ones. It's not rocket science, but it's not the way policy works now. Public benefits alone are not the answer. Our pilot is public benefits protected because there's no amount of cash in any of these cash pilots that can fully replace what our public benefits system does for people. But we know that that system and the wage structure is not working. Guaranteed income is a way to rebalance our economy that disproportionately works for the wealthy and powerful.
That poverty is not just about a lack of money. It's much more than that. It's also about a lack of power. It's also about being valued in your community. And what we mean by that is really having a sense of belonging, having access to social capital, to networks, to connections that can help you on your way up the ladder. Guaranteed income, what are we talking about? We're talking about a regular cash payment. Often it's monthly, but it doesn't have to be, that's accessible to very specific targeted members of a community with no strings attached. It's unconditional, no other requirements, right? That's where you get agency. People know best what they need and how to deploy resources. And guaranteed income redistributes money to people who need it most and who are facing that lack of access to opportunity, to mobility. And I want to put a kind of a fine point on this. It's different from this idea you might hear a lot about in the media, UBI, or universal basic income. And sometimes people use those words interchangeably, but I want to be really specific. We're not talking about universal. Because if something is universal, it goes to everyone, right? Everyone in this room, Darrick and I, who are both gainfully employed, would get access to it. I don't think we need it. Yeah. Billionaires would get access to it. I really don't think they need it. So we're not talking about universal. We're talking about building a floor, an income floor, under which no one in this community, no one in this country would fall.
I love the title of this event, right? It didn't start with the case for guaranteed income. It started with building a human rights economy. And why I love it is that there's a North Star. There is a direction that we're trying to get to. There is a conception of freedom. There's a conception of the way the world should exist, the way our country should exist. We don't start in that position enough. You know, I'm an economist. I teach economic classes. We don't ask the question at the beginning of our class, what is the purpose of an economy? So if we lead with that one question, what is the purpose of government? How do we want our economy to look like? What better way to end up than a human rights economy? One that facilitates people to be people. In the past, we've done programs that have promoted economic rights. We got tired of the immoral blight of watching our elderly in poverty struggling, and we passed Social Security. Well, at the time, it excluded domestic and agricultural workers. And domestic and agricultural workers, we knew that black women engaged in employment, 90% of them worked in one of those fields. For black men, it was over half. So that wasn't simply a coincidence. That was a design issue. That was a design issue that excluded certain segments of the population. Hopefully, we have reached the point in American society where we can recognize that we have a sordid history. If we want to learn from the past and think about an economic rights framework, a necessary ingredient is that we design it, we implement it, and we manage it in ways that are intentionally inclusive. When you design the policy, you should design it in a way that intentionally captures the group that's been most marginalized. Government has a fiduciary responsibility to its people to facilitate economic inclusion, civic engagement, social equity. And government The federal government in particular, because of the sovereign monetary power that the federal government has, is that ultimate North Star to achieve a human rights economy and do things like guaranteed income. Not simply because we believe guaranteed income is useful in a charitable sense, in a sense to promote the charitable consumption of people, but rather really to facilitate their capabilities. We've seen these guaranteed income demonstrations throughout the country, and no doubt it makes a difference in people's lives. We see that as well. But now we need policy. Now we need to get it implemented in a sustainable way. Well, why not the tax code? Our most potent tool by which government strategically directs resources to promote economic dynamism and economic activity. The different ways in which we tax labor income versus capital gains is a value. And not only is it a value, it's a strategic direction of resources. Poverty is a political choice. We have enough resources to eliminate it. I believe that people are the engine of our economy, the ingenuity of people, the desire of people. And how do you facilitate that? Well, with some resources. If you don't offer resources to facilitate that asset, then those people are subject to two things: somebody's charitable inkling, or they're vulnerable to exploitation. But if you offer people resources, not only does it enable greater work, but it also shifts power. So what guaranteed income can do, it becomes a resource that empowers people, not just an outcome, but enables them to do things and also negotiate better terms for themselves. Now, I imagine that there's some level of income by which it probably would lead to diminished work hours, but that's not what we're talking about here in this room. In fact, that's probably a counter-argument against universal basic income. But for the population that we're talking about, it actually improves the likelihood of working. The policies are basically direct. If people are hungry, feed them. If people don't have capital to get into wealth building, provide the capital so that they can get into wealth building. And again, this is not thinking about it in a charitable sense. This is thinking about it in a productive sense. You know, I think of it as industrial policy. So the policies are not the obstacles. Our problems are as much political as they are economic. It is the fact that economics, politics, and identity group stratification, namely race, gender, that all three are interwoven and related. If we understand that, then we can build up a politics that does not pit us against each other into who's deserving and undeserving, and build up a political base so that we can achieve the economic policies to fulfill the vision where people really are free, where people really do have the resources to be engaged civically, to be engaged economically, and to promote greater equity. I think that is the bottom line. That is the solution.
And so it's with that backdrop that my colleagues in the county board, and I'm pleased to have my colleague Matt DeFerranti here today, we are joining Counties for a Guaranteed Income to be a part of the national movement to uplift this, to actually break down the stigma that comes from providing support and the dignity that people deserve, and recognizing that there are policy solutions that are efficient and affordable that can actually deliver the outcomes of promoting a human rights economy. And so at our next board meeting, at our recess portion on the 13th of June, we will consider a resolution which will formalize our joining this movement, which will indicate our support of advocacy at the state and the federal level to make sure that we can bring sound guaranteed income strategies so that we can address the issues that have been so thoughtfully discussed this afternoon. And we don't want to be a passive voice, but an active one in hopefully accelerating our chance to get there as a country. Thank you all very much.